So, Matt, where were you in Dallas, Texas during the 1968 drive?
I have to end this call right now. This cannot be our intro.
Good
Welcome.
morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Broken Bill podcast, where
Good
we do
morning, good
not
afternoon, good
condone the
evening.
assassinations of presidential peoples.
We do
all.
not condone it, officially nor officiously, to
No.
be honest. Welcome to the Broken Bill podcast. Today is August 11th, 2022. The temperature outside in
Don't.
Seattle, Washington. Why am I doing this?
I'm stopping this right now. No.
It is 6:35 p.m.
6:35 p.m. The humidity it is 42%. We're expecting a light cool down towards the evening, and it'll be a great time to whip out the barbecue and have some hot dogs with the family. And if you're vegan, make sure you get some peppers and everything. Make sure everyone's satisfied. Nice cucumber salad. And carry on.
I have a question about hot dogs.
What's up?
So I've been made aware by the internet very recently that you're supposed to boil hot dogs?
You can, but you
Okay.
don't have to.
You don't have to, but
Yeah.
when you're eating a hot dog,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I'm thinking like me as a child visiting New York City for the first time and seeing a hot dog stand. These motherfuckers aren't putting it on a grill. They're
No, you
like
can
they're
boil it.
pulling it out of their like blicky like their little blicky cylinder, and there's like a bunch of them in there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about? Is that did they like boil it? Did they steam it?
So you can. So hot dogs in the United States, like a Frankfurter or some shit, they come pre-cooked. They are completely cooked. You can literally just eat it as is.
Okay.
But most people, like, you would want it warmed up. So an easy way to do it without a fire is just by boiling it. Just because boiled water keep it there, and it'll keep it room temperature and to the point where the water isn't gonna freeze, but it'll keep it consistent, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
I have an addendum to make to my statement. I said blicky, I meant glizzy.
you don't put your blicky in water to boil it over to make sure you're good for the winter.
I meant glizzy. Please continue.
But the most common thing around here is the LA street dog, which is hot dog wrapped in bacon, served with onions and bell peppers and all that stuff. That's
Nice.
the most common way over here. You usually get it after you leave the club, a ball game, or you're just out in the street, like past
That's right.
11.
We got the Seattle dog in
What's
Seattle.
a Seattle dog?
It is. Get ready. It's cream cheese, relish, and onions.
Go
And
on.
I will not lie to you, it kind of slaps. It's certainly like an experience. Like I heard cream cheese on a hot dog, and I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Right? But like, it kind of slaps. And I want to say, you have hot dogs with like the bun that's like half open,
Yeah.
right? That's like the typical American hot dog. When I was growing up in France,
Mm-hmm.
the hot dogs that we would eat was not like a hot dog like you guys have. It was like generally like an actual sausage,
Mm-hmm.
and then we would hollow out a baguette, and then put it in a baguette, and then that's how we would eat hot dogs.
You know, that's... Hold on.
And
So
it was
that-
fire.
So
It
that's
was
kind
crunchy.
of crazy. That's kind of crazy because in Hawaii,
Yeah.
if you go to like Oahu and all that stuff, which is like the main city where like the capital is Honolulu and all that shit. I don't know if it's common in Portugal because they have it's a hot dog. You fill with like a singular baguette. A singular baguette. A singular baguette. It is hollowed. They fill the dog and then they stab the dog and they fill it with like a jelly or some shit.
Well, what kind of jelly?
I'm not. I think they have like lilikoi jelly, which
Like
is
a sweet one or a
like
savory one?
guava type shit. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I'm gonna, like, there's just gonna be all these hot dogs going under us.
Yeah, we're putting
like,
a slideshow of hot dogs on the screen right now.
It's like, and then by the end of the video, we'll have a hot dog tier list. Okay, actually, I want to keep talking about food because this is kind of interesting.
Welcome to the Game Dev Podcast, everybody.
This is Game Dev, but fuck it, we're talking about food. So, what is your comfort food, both here and if you're in France?
Here I make my comfort food is I make quesadillas.
Mm-hmm.
Like on
cheese
or a cheese and hot sauce, or at my lowest point, a cheese and like barbecue sauce. Like struggle meal, right? Like straight up, like I'm too depressed to go outside. Like I don't even want to order. I just want to like stuff my face.
Bro, sometimes
so I did this a lot.
Out the bag.
No, I have too much self-respect to do like cheddar cheese out the bag because I fucking love cheese. Like I grew up eating like cheese every day. Like we have in the fridge at home, at my parents' house, we have a cheese platter that has a lid. And so you can keep the cheeses in there and you take it out, you put it on the kitchen table, and there's like, depending on how much you have at the time, you have like 4 or 5 different cheeses, and then everyone during the cheese course, which is before dessert, it's after dinner before dessert, there's the cheese course. Courses? Yeah, and this is not like a fancy thing. Like a lot of people around me growing up did this, where you just kind of eat cheese. You're like, oh, it's time for the cheese, and my dad would be like, oh, can you go get the cheese from the fridge? And I would get the platter and come back, right? So I love cheese very deeply. I have a very deep passion for cheese. So I do not eat cheese out of the bag, but I do take the cheese out of the bag and put it on a quesadilla, and then cook it in my pan, a little bit of vegetable oil, and then I would eat 2 of those, and that's my comfort meal. That's my struggle meal. And then back home, it's probably like a Nutella crepe. Okay. Would be like my comfort food, like ultimate, like I want to feel, because I can't get good crepe batter here or like make it myself.
Fuck, because they don't. To the crepe shop while you're here.
Yeah, I saw one.
Like,
so
for context. Right oh, here you go.
For context, I was in LA a couple, was it a month ago? Like a couple weeks ago. I was staying at Adrian's house for a week, and we were hanging out, which was a great time. But yeah, crepes, like I haven't really found anything like a French crepe, especially savory ones. Like they don't do the batter properly. I think it's a specific type of wheat that we use in the west of France that I'm like in love with because I grew up eating it. But it's like dark and like it's really good. OGs will know.
Yeah, no, like the place right by our friend's house, there's a dessert crepe shop, and it's like within walking distance. And I completely fucking forgot. I was like, oh, maybe I could have got like a crepe breakdown, crepe lore, just coming out of nowhere when we go.
A crepe breakdown. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could go on about crepe lore. I fucking love crepes. Crepes are great. What's your comfort food, Adrian?
Fucking Buddha jjigae is one of mine.
What is that? I don't think I've had that.
Buddha jjigae is a Korean war stew. It was a stew created when I think it was like during or in the aftermath of the Korean War. When it was like fucking post-war country, shit's fucked, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of the people that lived there would go onto American army bases and take food, and they would make a soup out of it. So it would be made of like spam, gochujang, kimchi, mushrooms. They have a bunch of stuff in it. And my grandpa, my great-grandfather, when he served in the Korean War, they introduced him to it because he was there a little bit after. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he made me that when I was younger. That's one of them. Fucking bologna and cheese sandwich. If that's old, and it's like bologna with American cheese. It is so bad, but that's like my nostalgia. And ramen, but top ramen specifically. Like there's good ramen,
Yeah.
but if like, but like on a cold day, I feel a little sick. I have Vicks on my chest. I get some fucking top ramen. I put on the stove and I just eat it. Oh my god, so much salt in my system, but so much warmth in my heart.
You have like a weekly intake of sodium in like 6 hours.
Oh, 100%. And so much MSG. It's so good.
That sounds great. I want to talk about the fact that this is not the first episode we recorded since we've actually gone live and started publishing. But we are very grateful for everyone that's watched so far and all the positive reception we've had to the episodes. I think as of right now, like 2 episodes are out.
Yeah.
As of this time of recording. And we've had nothing but positive feedback from everyone, and we're very grateful that people want to listen at all. I think that we didn't expect it. I think what did you say was your estimate on views for the first episode?
15,
and I think we broke that in like 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think we're like at 170 on just that one episode, which is like, it's not a lot by YouTube standards, but that live
on air.
But it's really cool that we even broke 100. 100's not a lot of people, or not a lot of like for YouTube, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's like,
we're at 171 right now, which is pretty sick. I feel grateful.
That's crazy.
I feel very grateful. How was your week, Adrian?
My week's been really, really busy. It's a lot of tool stuff, and it's just been it's been busy, but there's been like good news for me in different regards that I can't talk about yet. But hopefully I'll get to the point where I can talk about it.
Yeah, soon enough, hopefully.
Yeah. Planning a lot of stuff for our move soon. Moving companies are fucking expensive.
Yeah, man. I paid out of my ass to move to
How much
Washington.
did you pay? If you don't mind me asking.
Can we talk about it after the podcast?
Yeah, no worries. But
just so we don't talk like money specifically.
Yeah. But like even the stuff we're looking at right now is like, I think it's like 3 to 4 to move.
Yeah, I ended up paying a little bit more than that.
Okay, yeah.
Because they didn't estimate me properly, but we can talk about it after.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's moving is expensive. This is something. You're not moving because of your job, just to be clear, but
no,
this is something I just.
I have the luxury of being able to work remote, but they do, like, my lead wants me to go to office because I think he wants to meet with me and work with me in person.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, I just want to move because I've lived in LA my whole life.
Yeah, that's fair. You just feel like something a little different. Yeah. Trying it out somewhere else.
Like I won't go to Alabama or some shit, but I'll go somewhere else.
I wouldn't go to Alabama either.
Okay, hold up. Deadass, I will go visit Alabama.
I'll go visit anywhere.
Because they have really good food. But I have a fear I'm gonna get shot.
Yeah. I mean, I have a fear I'm gonna get shot in Alabama.
Yeah,
I'm a white boy, you know?
Yeah, but they'll hear your voice is like, French!
Yeah, exactly. It's like... They're like, is that an accent?
I think your cutoff is like New Orleans, because then you'll kind of fit in. It's like they got the Creole accent, but you'll be fine enough to like...
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to, I think this might be a good segue into an actual like game industry thing that I've personally experienced, which is having to move for your job, which is it's been a lot less prevalent after the pandemic and the advent of remote work, which I am a huge proponent of. I love that we're able to work remotely these days. What's up?
So I'm gonna clarify something before I get called a fake Hawaiian by everyone. A lilikoi is my wife
This
just
is about
texted
10
me.
minutes ago, isn't it?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
A lilikoi is closer to a passion fruit than a guava. I just went with the nearest tropical fruit I can think of. I only got reminded of this because my beautiful wife just called me a fake Hawaiian on my phone. And now I'm really bothered by it. And I'm not gonna get called out in front of everyone else. Like, this motherfucker doesn't know what a lilikoi is. What are you gonna tell me? Pele's not a god? Like, go fuck yourself. Get out
That
of
is
here.
very funny.
I'm gonna
That
get
is
my
very funny.
Hawaiian card revoked. Jesus.
I love that your wife is just listening and then was just like,
She walked
fake ass
away
bitch.
and she just texted me right now. So she heard it in passing and
That's
then
awesome.
decided to be like, hey, you're gonna get called out.
Fake asshole. That's
Okay.
funny, man. Yeah,
Go-
let's talk
go ahead.
about
Sorry.
having to. Yeah, sorry. No, it's fine. It's fine. Let's talk having to move for work. If for anyone who's not aware, a lot of the work in the game industry is generally not where you're from. A lot of it is in California. A lot of it is in places like Seattle, or in metropolitan cities that people like. What other hubs are there? There's Montreal. There's Toronto a little bit.
San Francisco.
San Francisco is huge. Seattle. A lot of it is on the West Coast, right? There's not a lot of studios. For
I think
example, in New York State.
Chicago is starting to get up there. But
Yeah,
it might only be like NetherRealm and a couple of other joints.
there's like people can fly and stuff over there, right?
Oh, there, I guess.
But
People can
the
fly us
point.
everywhere.
That's true. The point being, in the before times, working remotely was almost unheard of. I don't know. You can correct me on this because you've been around a little longer than I have. But before the pandemic, I hadn't heard of anyone working remotely for their job. I think the first time I was introduced to that concept is the Supergiant documentary was shot mostly during the pandemic, I think. So that's not even relevant.
Yeah.
But my point is, working remotely was just not a thing, so you had to move for your job, right? This is similar to what happened in the animation industry that I saw a lot, where my friends who were in animation programs in college would all move to LA and then try to find a job, right?
100%.
I had to make that move, and I moved to Seattle of my own volition. Like, I decided to be here. They would never have made me work in person. I wanted to be in person with Valkyrie. They never made me move.
COVID.
Yeah, I started my career during COVID. I think I've talked about this before on the podcast, but I did an internship with PlayStation, and I was working at San Diego studio, and I did all that remotely. And then my studio was like, hey, like, we want you on contract. And I was like, great. And they were like, you should probably move because we're going to come back to the office soon. And we want you there.
Little did they know.
And so I packed up. I lived in upstate New York at the time. I packed up and I moved all the way to the West Coast, tripled my rent, lived in a smaller place, and I worked the entire dev cycle of MLB The Show 21. I worked in a 450 square feet apartment with no AC, and just I was in there all day. It was in the height of the pandemic. I was really afraid to go outside at that point. And I moved to a city where I didn't really know anyone. And then I ended up meeting wonderful people there, and I had a lot of wonderful relationships there. But my point being that you had to move for your job back then, and inherently, like, if especially with sometimes how low you can be paid if you're not in higher positions like senior positions or like engineering positions. For example, if you work QA, it's literally impossible to survive in some cities because the pay is simply too low, right?
Yeah, because literally, when I was QA, the only reason I was able to live was overtime. It was
Yeah,
getting paid time and a half and then double time.
I
If you
think you talked
exceeded
about that a
6
little
hours.
bit in a
Yeah,
previous
we talked about it
episode.
briefly. Like, that was my motivation for switching studios. Like, when I went from, a lot of people thought I went from Treyarch to Infinity Ward because it's like, oh, you just wanted the extra title,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, literally no. I didn't give a shit about the title. It was a cool project to work on, but it was like, my motivation at the time was I just got married. We just moved together, and when overtime started going down, like, I was starting to work normal hours, like a 40-hour work week, I realized I couldn't live.
You didn't have enough money to
Yeah,
like
we didn't
make
have enough
everything-
money weekly. I think I was only making like $600 a week, if that.
That's rough.
And then so every month around rent time, I would have to bleed the savings account.
Yeah,
And so
which is not good.
Yeah, not at all. And when a couple of my coworkers began to go over to IW, I had to make a decision because it's like, I either stay in my area, which is about a half-hour drive to Santa Monica to work in studio, and just like pray I get a promotion.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was no like room for growth. I didn't think there was any room for growth at the time. I know a couple of my coworkers did grow, like, to higher positions, like producers and shit. But I didn't know at the time. Like, the only thing I was focused on was how can. And Claire couldn't get a job at the time either, because just getting a job is fucking shitty in general.
Hard.
Yeah, it's fucking brutal.
Really fucking hard.
But we couldn't find a gig. And so I was like, okay, I need to make a decision, or else we're gonna be kicked out of our apartment in like 3-4 months.
Right.
And rent was like $1,700 a month, not counting bills and shit.
Utilities, yeah.
Yeah. And so, and then I looked up how far the Infinity Ward office was for me, and it was about an hour and 45 minutes from my house.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, if I'm gonna do this, I gotta do this. And I think it was one time when I was just doing math. It was bad. That anxiety was fucking brutal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just had to make the call. I messaged one of my buddies, like, hey, are you still looking for QA people? And like, yeah, we're ramping up production towards the final. He got me in contact with the lead and then the manager. And I started 2 weeks later. And from that day on, I think it was like from August until, when did COVID start? COVID started in March, late February. I was driving about 3-4 hours a day.
Oh, man.
And working 60 to 100 hours a week on average.
That's fucked up, dude.
I mean, it
is what it is, right?
Yeah,
but
here's the thing too. I'm not gonna blame everything on IW, like poor production pipeline, like crunch.
Oh, that's not what we're doing.
No, yeah, I'm just
clear,
disclaiming
yeah.
that right now. Everyone I've worked with over there is kind. A lot of them are still really close friends to today. I fuck with them on Twitter. They're help
And
me
I
with
want to
that.
say the same thing about my coworkers at San Diego studio. Like everyone was wonderful, and like I had really good experiences for the most part. Uh, for the most part, obviously, but like I met some really good people there, and they were all incredibly kind to me.
Yeah. And well, uh, I think it was just a huge byproduct, and especially towards the end, like I left. I think it was a week before Warzone came out, and we were. I think it was going from Crunch on Blobs 4 to Modern Warfare, and then Warzone, and then the DLC. It was like back to back to back. I was burnt out of my mind. Couldn't do much, so it's just like, well, that's it. And then I think my lead at the time, or my manager, kind of realized I was. My lead loved me. I'm gonna disclaim that he, the one I was working with towards the end. Shout out to Hunter if you're watching this, hey bud.
What's up, Hunter?
He actually worked at Naughty Dog before, so that's funny. We got along really well, but I think he realized I was like running on fumes and shit. And then I was gone. I left. COVID happened. Game dev wasn't hiring at the time.
There was a big freeze.
Yeah.
In I want to say like March to June of 2020.
It was just game dev and just jobs in general.
Yeah. I remember. I don't know if I've ever talked about this, but I got my internship. I signed a contract in February of 2020, right? And then March of 2020 comes around and the pandemic starts, which was my last spring break of college for me. I stayed at home to work on my thesis project, which is still on my Artstation if you're curious. And I stayed at home to work, and my friends went to like different places and were like partying, and I was like, I can't wait for everyone to come back so I can party with them, like we can go out and stuff. And no one came back. You know, a lot of people, it was like, oh, there's an extra week of spring break. Oh, like we get 2 weeks of extra vacation. And then suddenly like, oh, this is how the world is. You have to do all your classes online. This is Zoom. You've never used Zoom before. Welcome to Zoom. But my point being that my hiring people at Sony, at SIE, got to me and they were like, hey, so we don't know if this is still happening about my internship. We have no idea. Like, give us a couple weeks. We're going to figure it out, but we need to talk to, obviously, your studio needs to decide if they can do it, right? And every single, on the art side, I want to say, on the art side and on the game side of SIE, every single studio canceled their internships, but San Diego studio. They were the only studio where my art director at the time, Paul Haney, super nice guy, was like, yeah, fuck it. Like, it's the same as everyone else. Like, we can figure it out.
Yeah.
And their IT was like, yeah, we can figure it out. And so he was like, yeah, let's still get him in. And so we had an animation intern, me, and then a couple like tech interns, probably, game design intern, just, you know, the random gamut. But I was the only environment art intern at Sony that year, and that I got insanely lucky, right? That was because that was the only place that had gotten back to me, that I had interviewed with, that wanted to hire me at that point. I had nothing else, and so I was kind of banking everything on this, because with my immigration stuff, if I didn't get a job, I would have to leave. I had like 30 days of unemployment at that point or something. And obviously you can't get hired on 30 days, especially in the middle of the pandemic. So I got incredibly lucky. But I think to circle back to,
Yes.
move
point. So when COVID hit, I just got a job at a startup tech company that eventually got bought out by Snap and all that shit.
Snapchat.
But when I started there, we're like, oh, we're all gonna go in office, and then the remote work transition, a lot of people just stayed remote, which is, I think, at this point in tech and just games, because of COVID, it allowed for this push to be like, you can just do remote work.
Yeah.
And the only people I ever saw, like when you brought up if I ever knew anyone, I was trying to think, and I think the only person I ever saw was like an art director once or twice, but that's just because they had to go out of state on an emergency. And it was never like, it never became the normal.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask too, because of with the advent of remote work and Bungie leading the charge, Insomniac popping off with allowing a lot of studios to be like, hey, you can just work remote, it's fine. And like they display maps and all this shit, like if you're in these states, go for it. And even Sony Visual Arts, originally they were gonna have me come down to San Diego, which is fine. I love San Diego.
Shout out San Diego. Okay, don't lose your thread, bud. For the audio listeners, Adrian is drumming on himself right now.
I was ham boning. Fuck. They, like, partially way through, they're just like, you can just stay remote. And then when we were scheduled to go back in office, I think it was like, we're slated for like October of this year. They're like, well, while everyone's out, might as well just do reconstruction. And they're like, it's like, and I think like everyone's doing construction right now. Not even just
I mean,
everyone's just like, no one's here, fuck it.
They destroyed your old office. Like that building is gone, and they were building a new one. Damn. They raised that one to the ground. I remember, just because the San Diego studio office, which was newly built, was right next to the old VASG office, and then they started using half of ours, etc. But yeah, remote work is. Sorry?
They hire people in Canada, everywhere else, New York. It doesn't matter. Like, they're just like, if you're within the continental United States and Canada, just apply.
So it's really good, right? Because a lot of the issue with the games industry is that, and this was an issue that stems into everything, right? It stems into diversity. It stems into like the quality of the workforce that you can get. Is that if you're bound by your location, there's only a certain pool of applicants that you can pull from. It's people that either already live here, can afford to move, which is, moving is really fucking expensive, which is something we just talked about. Not everyone can afford to like uproot their life, go away from their family, their support system, everything they've known, and go to a city where they don't necessarily know anyone. You know, there's a lot of psychological factors and mental health factors, and also very real economical money factors that makes it really complicated for some people to move.
Also, pray to God you don't come from a fucking country area where it's like really quiet. Like if you're from the Midwest and you come to LA and you're like, oh, I want to live in downtown LA, you're gonna get a night and day left hook because you don't know
culture
anything
shock.
about the city. It's because you go. I went to the Midwest. I went to Minnesota from someone who's lived in LA their whole life, and then like I got culture shock just because it's so fucking quiet.
It's so different, and I'm seeing this, and I mean it. Like, I'm literally in therapy because of how much I moved over the past 3 years. I've moved 3 times in the past 3 years, and I was hitting such a low point that I had to go to therapy, where I just felt so lost, and I didn't have anything to tether myself to, right? Because I didn't have it. I didn't have a support system near me. I mean, I've never had a support system near me because my parents live 5,000 miles away. But COVID just made it that much more real, I think. But yeah, so remote work is really, really good. Is
Especially
I
with
think the point I was
isolation,
trying
too,
to make
that's
at the
gotta be
beginning.
hard.
Sorry?
Like, because of COVID and how isolating COVID kind of made us, like, as a society, if anything, we're so far separated from each other, we kind of forget everyone's people. Like,
It's hard, I
it's
think,
hard.
yeah.
It's
And
hard,
I
it's
mean,
really brutal.
to an extent, I think this is one of the challenges of as someone who doesn't work remotely anymore, and I did this on purpose, while also being a huge supporter of remote work. Um, you kind of lose, like, it's harder to read people over text, on Slack and stuff. Communication is a little more complicated. Um, I had trouble, like, forming relationships with my coworkers, because instead of going by their desk and seeing what they're doing and asking what they're doing, I would have to, like, look at their stand up and, like, DM them and be like, or be like, hey, like, how's it going, in a DM, like,
It's weird.
which it's a different vibe, right?
Yeah.
And I was struggling with that a lot, being so far away from the team, and my previous job. And then when I got the job at Valkyrie, I wanted to move to Seattle anyway because I figured out that California was not the right fit for me culture-wise. And they were like, yeah, like, we'll get you in the office, no problem. And we have people that are fully remote from a bunch of different states. But they're, yeah, it's nice to have the option, I think, is the important thing that I want to mention.
Yeah.
People work differently. Everyone is human, and everyone is incredibly different. And I think it's really, really important to have the option for people who work better in those situations, and then people who want, to be able to live anywhere that they want to. If they have family somewhere, they want to take care of their family. If they simply do not like Seattle or California, they can live wherever they want. And then also, hybrid work, I think, is also really great.
I have a feeling when I move up there, I'm more than likely just gonna do hybrid, because some days I'm just like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go inside.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, there's some days I'm like, I wish I could just right now work.
Full time.
We can talk about this. This is interesting. There's some barriers to hybrid work, specifically for artists. We have big setups. So, for example, at my current gig, I have 3 monitors, my work machine, and the dev kit, right?
That's a lot of. That's
a lot of shit.
2 desks.
And we have a big desk, and I have everything stacked on it, and everything's real tight. It's not feasible for me to move that back and forth.
Yeah.
Every day, right? And on the money side of things for the studio, they might not have the funds simply to be like, okay, fuck it, everyone gets 2 dev kits, everyone gets 2 work machines, like the artists, right? So you have to buy people laptops, and you have to get the technology to remote into your dev kit, or like into your work machine, right? But oh no, there's a fucking GPU supply, we can't build the laptops right now. And then you go through, like, yeah, right, exactly. And so there's a bunch of different barriers to it. Some people have done hybrid the whole time at my studio, because they have jobs that they don't need all the extra shit I need. And they've been loving it. And I hope we can get there eventually, even though I think I would probably go into the office most of the time, because I really enjoy the separation of work and my home life. That was a huge issue for me when I was working remotely. It was that, like, I cannot afford having a room that is just my office, right? Yeah. I'm in my living room right now, and you can see my kitchen, like, back there. Like, this is what I can afford with my salary, and this is, like, this apartment is almost twice as big as the one I used to live in San Diego. And I would have my work computer and my own computer at the same desk, and I would switch back and forth after the workday. And then I just got incredibly depressed because everything looked the same all the time, and I wasn't moving. I wasn't being active. I wasn't walking to and from work like I do today. I didn't have time to decompress. And to be fair, I wasn't very good about those things. But to like install those routines in my life, I was not good at that point. But that was my big negative with remote work, was not being able to do that. To like separate work and
like
my personal life.
Just have that fucking like that send off and shit. It's kind of hard, honestly, and like even though I do have good separation, I've gotten better at it lately, just because it's like as soon as it hits like a certain time limit, I usually just get told to go play video games by my partner, like Claire, out of nowhere, just because like, hey, I want to play Destiny, and then we just play Destiny for the rest of the night. You know what I mean?
Nice.
Yeah, it's really cool. So I just hit that point, and we're 3 years in. 2 years in? 2 years in. Almost 3 years. Jesus Christ, it's almost been 3 years.
Since you got...
Since the pandemic.
Oh, the pandemic. I was like 3 years since you got married, 3 years.
Oh no,
I was like so confused. I was like, did Claire not talk to you before?
I think on a business end too, because right now, most studios are hiring out the ass.
Oh my god, yeah.
Because
not juniors though.
Not juniors. Pray to God you want to start in the industry.
Only senior.
Only senior.
Only senior.
Because that's how it works. You just make seniors out of nowhere.
Yeah,
right.
Just like that. Right.
Fuck growing talent.
We've talked about this.
Yeah. But again, fuck growing talent. Apparently. But with the the ability to hire remotely, I think it'll help the quote-unquote hiring crisis that exists, because I'm gonna sound like, I don't know if I'm gonna sound like a capitalist or an anti-capitalist, but I'm gonna sound like something. But I think it's like the reason there's a hiring shortage is because no one wants to take a risk on any new talent, and thus it stagnates what you have. Like the only reason I have the gig I have is because I applied to a position I didn't think I was qualified for. If anything, I was a high mid-level artist at most, and then they hired me as a senior. But at this point, I doubt titles mean anything. I think it's just an arbitrary thing just to make people feel better. It's like, oh, we have seniors. It's like, do you? I feel, and we're all on the same level. Like, we don't, obviously there are standouts that are insanely good artists here and there, but it's like we all go through the same motions. We all need to learn the tools. We all need to learn the workflow. It's like, this all exists. Why aren't we having people and bringing them up and allowing them to prosper?
Right.
Especially if you're so confident in a title or something, it like allow for people to grow, and the shortage will be gone, I guess. I don't fucking know. I'm not smart. I'm an idiot. I move vertices for a living.
I think historically, like, the issue has been, and I've gone through this dance before getting hired full time, is that the only positions that were available to juniors were like contract positions, right?
Oh, 100%. I'm still on contract.
Wish you shouldn't be, but there's a bunch of I see this all the time where like there'll be like contract positions and they'll hire juniors, right? People out of school and stuff, or like people who are just starting, and then they're like, oh, this is a 6-month or 12-month contract, and then after the project ships, they just like lay them off.
Yep.
And it's like, and they're like, oh, you'll be fine, you have this experience and stuff, and it's like, well, that doesn't really do anything because oftentimes, like, I find that contractors are the first ones to crunch and the ones that do a lot of work
Mm-hmm.
compared to the full-time people. And generally there's, I mean, this we could, I eventually I want to have a whole episode about contract versus full-time and like the tensions that that brings to a studio when oftentimes you could not even differentiate the type of work people are doing, but they're
Wanna
treated
know,
like second-class citizens.
even now, um, uh, like I've only been on contract since I've worked in the industry,
Mm-hmm.
and it's funny you say that, like, that you feel like contract workers do more work. I think it's often enough. It's because everyone that's done it, or at least every job I've been to, it's like in the hiring process they kind of dangle the idea of you getting
Of
full time.
getting you full.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, if I work really hard and I prove it,
Right.
I'll be a full-time employee.
It's
But
all about that need to prove yourself, right? This is what I
yeah,
experienced. Like, I was working really fucking hard to see if I could get full time because they were like, "Oh, like we can talk about it," and I'm like, "Okay, like great, when?" And they're like, "Oh, like after we ship this game," and I was like, "Obviously, I have to like give a great impression," um, and oftentimes it's not even in my direct manager's hands,
yeah, like,
right? It's
there's
the higher
politics in
ups.
it.
It's studio politics and like budget shenanigans and stuff, and it's like my issue with it is that if you don't get in juniors securely at this is what people talk about, right? Like I've seen this take from higher ups at studios, management people. They're like, well, we'd hire juniors but they just leave after a year. And I'm like, you didn't hire a junior, you hired a contractor, and then their contract was ending and they started looking for work.
Yeah,
You did not make, because you're like, I don't want to take risk on someone that I might not like make it or like might not take to the work properly and stuff like that. And it's like, you can tell I'm getting heated because I took my glasses off.
no, you should.
If you don't put in the structure to help a junior grow, the junior is not going to grow like you want them to. They will figure it out themselves and they will start studio hopping, which is what everyone does right now because generally it's the only way to get a proper raise. It's the only way to get a title change.
That's the only thing.
That's literally what you did, right?
I'm still potentially doing, because it's like, I don't know what's gonna happen. Like,
Right.
until I get something in writing, I have no fucking idea what I'm doing.
Until you get full-time, you don't know if, because this is an important piece of context. In the state of California, and in some other states, it's an at-will employment state, which means that not only can you quit at any time, the studio can fire you at any time without prior notice. So you're not safe. You're not like, I have a job. It's like, if they decide,
let go from my W like on a random day.
right? It's
That's
like,
what my
oh,
contract
it's
ended.
Wednesday, and you come in, and it's like, oh, there's an all hands meeting, and then all the QA people are gone, and you can't even get back to your desk. You get escorted out of the office, and then they get you your stuff from your desk because they're afraid you're gonna take data or something. That is like that. That's a climate of like people don't feel comfortable.
I'm gonna tell this story. I don't know if I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna figure it out, but I'm gonna tell the story real quick.
Okay.
So there was a day right after Modern Warfare launched. We, like, it was a random morning. I think it was a Monday or a Tuesday, and we saw that our contract representative was in the office, right? And-
Automatically, like bells are
Yeah,
ringing, right, in your
and
head. You're
then-
like, oh shit.
Yeah, and then she started calling people in to rooms,
Mm-hmm.
and we knew what was coming. We knew what was going on. It was
So
after
everyone's
launch.
like scrambling at their
No,
desk
yeah,
and
like-
shit, right?
Like, we were all making jokes that it's like, it's like a fucking death march, and if
Yeah.
it get called in, you're like, we know you're gone. Like no
It's
matter
like, okay,
what.
bye.
Yeah, and so we all like just kept an eye out, and we were looking at everyone that was there, and it got to a point like we were trying to make jokes throughout the entire fucking day.
You're
Like,
just trying. I mean, it's
yeah,
psychological, right? You're
and
trying to
then
keep
like
your
we
head
couldn't
up.
work. Like our manager came in and asked why weren't we working, and then we told him, and then he's just like he couldn't say anything. It's one of those things where it's like, fuck, I get it, but it's like, and it, I remember this guy made a wall of all the pictures of people that got let go,
Mm-hmm.
like an in memoriam wall,
Yeah.
because it's like we spent fucking 4 months, 12, 15 hours a day with these people, and like they're our friends. Like even if you only worked with someone a couple times, you know them really well.
Yeah.
And it's like we had this wall, and then they took it down like a couple days later because apparently it's in poor taste. I was like, well, it's in poor taste. You couldn't fucking
For you to
give
let them
everyone a
go.
notice. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was brutal. It was like
And
that
so
entire
this is
fucking process was the most anxiety-inducing day I've had in a while, and it fuck, it just sucked.
to for context, this is day of. You do not know what's happening, and you do not know if you're gonna lose your job on that day, at that moment, and then you might get a severance package. If you're a contractor, you might not get a severance package, and suddenly you're like your whole, especially in today's economy where it's like if you don't make money, like right now, it's really hard to even live. This is a stupid statement. You know what I'm trying to say, right? Like it's hard to save. It's hard to like everyone spends a lot of money on rent.
Most
and
QA
it's like,
people are living paycheck to paycheck.
right,
That's a
because it's
fact.
QA, it's underpaid as shit.
Oh, and by the way, when I went to tech for that one time,
yeah,
I got a raise, full benefits, for less work. It was, and not to say it was less work, but it was far less stressful.
Mm-hmm. And you were working strictly 40 hours.
Yeah, and it was like 40 hours. Do not crunch. The product will still ship. We're fine. And it was so much better. Like, and it was like, oh, and again, to circle back to we're in a hiring shortage shit. It's not. You just treated people like shit for so long, they don't want to work for you.
There's, and I think we're seeing this across all industries.
Yeah, 100%.
Across the country, right? I mean, you're seeing all these fast food workers quitting, and then people forming unions and stuff. Let's go unions again, one more time. Love a union. But it's to be honest, it's traumatic to go through something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's some people get PTSD from it. It's like the fear of like not knowing if you're gonna have a job tomorrow that comes with contract work is scary. And to be clear, this doesn't only happen to contract people. If full-time people get fired too, not fired, let go, sorry, because of like layoffs. I mean, there was just a fucking layoff at like Pocket Jams in Jam City recently, which sucks. Like, it's always so upsetting when you hear about layoffs because it's like, oh shit, like I knew that guy, like I'm friends with him, and suddenly like they're gone.
Yeah, it's like
they don't have a job anymore.
You're going through one of the hardest things someone in this system can do. It's like, holy shit, I'm so.
It's really hard.
Honestly,
and,
every time like a lead or someone above me says, "Hey, can we talk or can we have a chat or something?" I fucking freak out. My palms get sweaty. My knees weak. Fucking spaghetti. It's terrifying. And then I click on it and say, "Hey, what's up?" Is that? "Oh, I'm just checking in on you. How's your day?" And then I'm like, "Oh."
Dude, when you get to your workstation and it's like 9:30 a.m. and you see a message from your lead that's like, "Hey, like I wanted to chat with you real quick."
Yeah.
And it's like, "Oh, fuck!" Like immediately a billion alarm bells go in my head, and I'm like, "I'm fired. This is it." And then it's like, "Oh, like I wanted to talk about how great of a job you did on this," and it's like, it just sucks, man, that we have to go through this. There's no, I mean, the job security is.
I made a fucking joke in my review today. Like, we're just going over stuff. And everything I was told was positive. It's like good work. It's like maybe just some things here and there. and I just let it fucking slip. I didn't even mean to, but I just said, I don't know how to react to positivity. Like,
we're a bunch of traumatized children.
I'm just like, oh, it just slipped, and I'm like, whoops. Luckily, they laughed, so I was fine. But I was like, oh, that was not intentional.
Like, I don't know if this is something you do as well, but I think like a trauma response that I have to that is that I cannot hold on to the positive feedback that I get, and I obsess over the negative, or what I perceive to be negative feedback.
Or like, if they say something nice, you find something wrong with it to even
Yeah,
out.
and this is something that I've learned by working in this industry, and just I think we're getting to a point where we can wrap it up. But I want to say this: we love video games. We love working in video games. This is like, we wouldn't be here. I mean, Adrian worked in a different industry for a bit. We wouldn't be here if we didn't love it.
I left a full-time job with benefits
to come back to games, right?
Because I was like, I want to make video games. I'm not happy doing this. I want to do this.
This is an industry that thrives on the passion of the people that work in it for the product. Every single person that works in the game industry loves video games. And we love it, and we want to work on them, and we want to make the best thing possible. And there's some companies that prey on that.
There's a lot of companies that do.
And there's some that don't, and there's some that understand, and there's some that nurture and bring up talent with them.
They understand.
Right. But it's to anyone who's not, like, I'm speaking about this in the assumption that, like, I know a lot of people who work in the industry listen to this. But to anyone who doesn't, like, this is the reality of your favorite games. Like, a lot of us don't know if we have a job tomorrow when the product ships, when the game launches and everyone buys it and loves it. This is not, just to be clear, this is not my position anymore. I feel safe and secure at my current job, and I've been very supported. But this is the reality for a lot of people, and it makes me sad that it doesn't have to be this way. And I think this is part of why we started this, right? So we could talk about this stuff and, like, just bring some awareness to it, at least.
Just bring humanity behind of all the things you like. Like, a lot. It's a meme in the games industry when you see a studio headlined by a Jason Schreier article. Like, if you see that shit, you're like, fuck, what'd we do, or what happened? And it's just like, all right, we're like, something's going down. And like, we've reached a point to where, one, we joke about it because it's happened so frequently, especially in the last fucking year with all the Activision Blizzard shit. And it's like, we want this industry to be better. We just have to take responsibility and realize that we are all people. We're not machines. We're not just fucking algorithms that make you a product out of nowhere. We're not content creators. We are, but
well, specifically us, we decided to create content about this.
Yeah. But it's like, we made this thing. We want to do this thing. You enjoy what we make, and we enjoy making it. But just remember, we are people. You can't fucking treat us like garbage and expect us to be like, oh, it's okay, I'm sorry.
Just because you can see us on Twitter, the fact that we're human beings and we also have Twitter, or we also have Instagram, and we don't live to be content machines.
Nope.
Right? This is a very important point I want to make about this. Artists and game developers and anyone else, obviously, we are not content creators. We are working on a product for you. We are working on a game. A game is not content. You can create content out of a game. The game itself is not content. It does not exist for the sole purpose of entertaining you. For us, it exists because it allows us to live. This is important, right? it's a really important distinction that I think a lot of people who like are reply guys to game developers, or there's been a bunch of like things where like I remember specifically a Respawn dev was like on Twitter, like this was like maybe a year ago, and the dev was like on Twitter and they were like, oh, like X traumatic thing happened in my family. And then people were in the replies like, oh, LOL, fix what's a Apex
Fix
character?
Bloodhound.
Yeah, fix Bloodhound. Bloodhound broken. What? Like, okay, that's great. Can you like fix the game though? And it's like, you guys are fucking assholes. Where's your empathy? Someone just told you their mom died, and
it's always the fucking bitches that have this alt account. It's the one with 2 followers, X name, fuck ton of numbers. If you're that, you're a coward. You're such a bitch. Oh my god, it's like,
we do not like you.
No, it's like,
and we know you just want a reaction out of us, but you bring real trauma to real people by doing that. It's really hard. A lot of people quit the industry because of you.
It happens a lot.
It happens a lot, and everyone knows someone that stopped working because of stuff like this. And we say this out of love, again, because we love our industry and we want everyone that interacts with it in any way, shape, or form to have a good time. But for everyone to have a good time, you have to respect the people that make the product. And we want to have a good time with you guys. We want to be able to interact with y'all and talk about, I mean, us doing this is because we want to interact and we want to bring awareness, and we want to like talk about the games that we love and talk about an industry that we love, and we want to share that. This is an act of love for the industry and for the people that might be interested in what we're doing. But there has to be a mutual respect there, of a respect of humanity. And we could talk about this for a lot longer.
Yeah.
I think this is something Adrian and I both feel strongly about.
Imagine like being a Neil Druckmann or Corey Barlog. Barlog. All right, please don't beat my ass.
Sorry, Corey.
I couldn't imagine having like all that pressure on Twitter, and it's like, oh, I'm out having dinner with my wife or my partner, and it's just like, oh, when's God of War coming out? Release date? ? Release date? And then like a hate comment about Abby or some shit, and it's just like, the separation doesn't exist, and it is a public place. It is a website, like cyberbullying meme. It's like, oh, just get offline, but it's like, it sucks, and I understand why a lot of people have notifications off and shit. I do half the time.
Yeah.
It's I don't know.
It's hard.
Don't mind me just complaining about a very privileged position I have in my life, where I sit at my desk and make video games while someone's out there doing so much harder labor.
Yeah, I mean, we
Welcome
are
to the
speaking...
Broken Privilege podcast.
The Broken Privilege. Oh my god. I mean, we are privileged to be able to work here, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be treated like human beings. It doesn't mean
struggles.
It's not mutually exclusive.
Yeah. 100%.
I mean, everyone has their own struggles, and this is ours. Do you think we're at a good place to wrap things up? Yeah.
I think we're good, because if we keep going, we can do another.
We could keep going.
There's gonna be another trauma or like some crazy game dev bullshit that'll happen in a couple months, and
we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about it again. It always happens.
Thank you for sharing what you talked about today.
Yeah,
I'm grateful.
I never realize. I always forget how fucked up it is until I talk about it, and I'm like, oh, spicy. Cool.
Yeah, that sucked ass, man. I'm sorry you had to go through that.
Anyway, that's it for this week. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Hope you brush your teeth, you wash your face, you drink your water. Don't forget your skincare routine. Get at least 6 to 8 hours of sleep.
Put on sunscreen.
Yeah, unless you're a melanin homie. Actually, if you no,
You
that's
should
life.
still put on sunscreen.
Yeah, you should probably still put on sunscreen, or you'll just get wrinkly. Check out our Twitter at Broken Build. We have our own Twitters under here and
on the
there.
screen somewhere.
It's usually under me, unless I'm decide to go crazy. Matt, any final words? I don't know. I kind of ran out of shit to say. Usually do this.
That's true. You just went with it. I love it. I don't have anything to say. You wrapped it up pretty well. If you enjoyed this, feel free to share it with your friends. Feel free to talk about it on social media. If you are an audio listener, just giving us a comment, a review, even a like it really helps. Just getting it to more people.
So you're saying to like, comment, and subscribe.